Jonathan Hale pressed his palm against the shuttle window as the Galactic Council station came into view. The structure hung in the void like a crown of metal and light, its rings glowing with the power of dozens of civilizations. Ships of every shape moved in and out, spiked war cruisers, graceful carriers, tiny dart-shaped scouts. Each one carried a flag, each one a reminder that Earth was the newest member here, the youngest voice among giants. He adjusted his collar, trying to calm his racing heart. The uniform he wore was simple, dark blue with a silver crest of Earth across the chest, but to him it felt heavier than armor. Behind him, two guards in sleek combat suits stood silent, their visors scanning every detail. They knew what this meeting meant. If Hale succeeded, humanity would no longer be treated as an outsider. If he failed, Earth would remain alone, surrounded by powers that might not always tolerate its growth. The docking clamps locked with a loud hiss. Hale took a deep breath, remembering the president's words before he left Earth. Do not bow, do not beg, speak as one of us, equal among equals. With that promise in mind, he stepped onto the platform. The corridor leading to the council was wide and dazzling, lined with banners of alien empires. He passed tall figures with translucent skin, insectoid diplomats who clicked and hissed as they walked, and others who glided on hovering discs. Some glanced at him with curiosity, others with cold disdain. He could feel their eyes, some wondering if humanity could be trusted, others already convinced it should be crushed before it grew stronger. When the council doors opened, Hale froze for a moment. The chamber was enormous, shaped like a great circle. Each delegation sat in raised seats, arranged in tiers, with the central floor left open for the speaker. Beams of light illuminated the space, and the air was filled with a low hum of translators converting hundreds of languages at once. He stepped into the center, feeling the weight of countless eyes. The Speaker of the Council, a towering being with a golden mask, raised one hand. Representative of Terra, the voice boomed, translated instantly into Hale's earpiece. You may address the council. Hale swallowed hard, then spoke. His voice was steady, carried by microphones to every corner of the chamber. I come here not as a servant and not as a conqueror. I come as an equal. Humanity has watched the stars for centuries, and now that we stand among them, we choose peace first. We believe in cooperation, in shared knowledge, in trade that uplifts all. We do not come to take, we come to give. Murmurs rippled through the tiers. Some aliens leaned forward with interest, others scoffed. A reptilian delegate hissed to his neighbor while a crystalline being tapped its arm in irritation. Hale continued, ignoring the reactions. We know what it means to struggle. Our world has seen war, famine, disaster. But through it all, we learned one truth. Survival is strongest when shared. Alone, we are fragile. Together, we are unbreakable. Humanity offers its hand to the Council to build, to defend, to stand as brothers and sisters among the stars. For a moment, the chamber was silent. Then applause rose from a section, small, hesitant, but real. A few delegations nodded in approval. Hale felt his chest rise with cautious hope. He had expected resistance, but the idea of peace had touched some hearts, but not all. From the shadows of the upper tiers, a Vadron delegate, armored in black metal, sneered. His voice cut through the chamber like a blade. And if humanity cannot be trusted, if this talk of peace is only a mask for conquest, your kind is young, you burn too fast. Perhaps the galaxy would be safer if Earth's flame were extinguished before it spreads. The chamber erupted into whispers and growls. Some supported the warning, others condemned it. Hale felt heat rise in his face, but he did not falter. He raised his hand. If you fear us, then come to know us. Judge us by our actions, not by shadows. Humanity will prove its worth, not by words, but by deeds. We will not be ignored, and we will not be erased. The speaker silenced the noise with a gesture. Enough. The council will deliberate on Earth's petition. The golden mask turned toward Hale. You have spoken with courage, human, but courage alone does not guarantee survival. Hale bowed his head slightly, just enough to show respect, but not submission. He walked back across the floor, his steps echoing in the silence. He could feel eyes burning into his back, some with admiration, some with hatred. The path ahead was uncertain, but he had lit the spark. When he returned to the docking corridor, one of his guards leaned close. You did well, sir. Hale managed a small smile. We'll see. Words are fragile. It's what comes next that matters. Outside the station window, 1,000 ships moved like stars come alive. Somewhere in that sea of lights, enemies waited, sharpening their knives. Hale didn't know when or how the strike would come, but deep inside he felt it. His arrival had not ended Earth's loneliness. It had painted a target on humanity's back, and soon someone would aim for the heart. The banquet hall shimmered with light from crystal chandeliers, each refracting color across the polished walls. Dozens of tables stretched in perfect circles, laden with dishes from across the galaxy, fruits that glowed faintly, meats from beasts no human had ever seen, and wines that shimmered like liquid fire. Jonathan Hale sat at the central table, surrounded by alien dignitaries, his guards positioned close but trying not to draw attention. It was meant to be a night of celebration, a moment to show unity after his bold speech. Hale raised his glass politely as a host of insectoid servers scuttled between the guests. Across from him, a delegation of amphibian traders croaked their approval of Earth's message. To his left, a feathered ambassador offered him a strange fruit as a sign of respect. He accepted it with a smile, careful to eat only a small piece. Every move mattered here. Every gesture would be remembered. Laughter and chatter filled the room, yet beneath the surface, Hale sensed tension. He caught the cold stare of the Vadron envoy seated several tables away, armored even at a feast, its piercing red eyes fixed on him. Hale turned back to his plate, pretending not to notice, though his heart thudded harder in his chest. The server returned, pouring him a glass of golden liquid from a crystal decanter. Hale lifted it slowly, watching the ripples in the strange drink. He had been warned. Never drink without caution. Still, refusing would cause offense. He took a small sip, the taste sharp and sweet. He forced himself to smile. Moments later, as he tried to rise and thank his hosts, a sudden weakness gripped his limbs. His vision blurred. The chamber tilted around him. Gasps rose as his glass slipped from his hand, shattering on the floor. He clutched his chest, the sound of voices fading into a dull roar. His guards rushed forward, catching him before he collapsed fully, their weapons half drawn as they scanned the hall. Chaos broke out. Some delegates shouted for medics. Others withdrew, whispering with nervous glances. The Vadran envoy sat motionless, the faintest curve of satisfaction on its lips. Hale struggled to speak, but his throat tightened, the poison burning through his veins. His guards lowered him gently, calling frantically for help. The council's healers arrived too late. The life drained from his eyes as he stared upward at the dazzling chandeliers, their fractured lights blurring into darkness. A chilling silence spread across the room. One of the healers whispered, "He is gone." The words echoed like thunder. Every ambassador present understood what it meant. A guest from Earth, murdered under the council's roof. Some shouted for justice. Others demanded restraint. But in that moment, alliances shifted, suspicions deepened, and humanity's future was written in fire and blood. Far from the hall, deep in the shadows of the station, unseen figures slipped away through hidden corridors, leaving no trace but the trail of fear they had ignited. The galaxy had underestimated humans, but now they had given them a reason to unleash their fury. The broadcast went live across Earth's networks, interrupting every channel, every home, every city square. The image of Jonathan Hale's lifeless body being carried from the banquet hall filled the screens. His uniform was torn, his face pale, and the council guards around him looked powerless. For a moment, the world was silent. People froze at work, in schools, in factories. Then the silence broke into grief and anger. Candles lit the streets of New York, London, and Tokyo. In Johannesburg, thousands gathered in the main square, holding banners with Hale's name. In Sao Paulo, crowds chanted his last words to the council, repeating them like a vow. On Mars Colony, miners shut down operations and raised the Earth flag over the domes. Humanity had lost its voice among the stars, and the wound cut deeper than anyone expected. The president stood before the United Nations, her eyes red but her voice sharp. This was not only an attack on Ambassador Hale, she declared. This was an attack on every man, woman, and child of Earth. They sought to silence us. They sought to keep us afraid. But we will not bend. We will not break. Humanity will answer. The words sparked an uproar of approval. Soldiers saluted in barracks. Civilians cheered in the streets. Even those who once doubted humanity's place in the galaxy now stood united. The grief of billions turned into fire. In military command centers, maps of alien space glowed red. Generals and admirals, who had long waited in silence, now laid their plans openly. Hidden fleets stationed in asteroid belts powered up. Experimental weapons, once kept in secret vaults, were moved to launch bays. Engineers worked around the clock, their hands steady, their eyes fierce. On the orbital yards above Earth, massive ships came alive, their hulls reflecting the blue of the planet below. These were not fragile explorers. They were war machines built with lessons from centuries of human conflict. Carriers with rail cannons, cruisers with stealth technology, destroyers designed for speed and aggression. For years, humanity had hidden its true strength, pretending to be weaker than it was. That lie ended the moment Hale's heart stopped beating. In underground bunkers, young recruits volunteered in record numbers. Parents sent their children with tears in their eyes, whispering, "Do it for Hale, do it for Earth." Old veterans returned to service, dusting off uniforms they thought they would never wear again. The first meeting of the War Council was short, brutal, and clear. The president gave the order, "We strike first. We strike hard. The galaxy must learn that when you kill one of ours, you inherit the wrath of all." As the meeting ended, the generals saluted in silence. Outside, the people already knew what was coming. Humanity had never been united like this before. Borders, rivalries, old hatreds, all forgotten in a single night. There was only one cry on every tongue, rising across Earth and its colonies: justice for Hale, fire for the galaxy. And somewhere hidden in the shadows, the conspirators who had poisoned him watched the flames of humanity's rage ignite. They had wanted Earth silenced. Instead, they had awakened a storm. The Vadran Empire slept confidently in its own borders, certain that Earth would hesitate, certain that humans would drown in debate and grief. But in the cold dark of space, human fleets moved like silent predators. Without warning, Earth's first strike began. At the edge of the Vadron mining colony on Charon 7, alarms screamed too late. Human destroyers dropped from faster than light, their rail cannons glowing. In one volley, the orbital defenses shattered, explosions lighting the black sky. Workers scattered as the colony's power grid went dark, entire cities swallowed in fire. Survivors stared upward in disbelief. No species had ever dared strike the Vadran on their own soil. On the trade routes, sleek human frigates intercepted convoys. Instead of negotiation, they opened fire. Cargo ships burned, wreckage scattering across the void. Messages of distress crackled through the networks, but the human fleets vanished before reinforcements could arrive. They hit like lightning and then were gone, leaving only wreckage and silence. The council chamber erupted with outrage when news of the strikes reached them. Some demanded punishment, others warned caution, but humanity ignored their voices. To Earth's commanders, the time for words had ended. Hale's blood had not been forgotten. At Vadran shipyards, the true scale of Earth's fury was revealed. Massive human carriers arrived, launching swarms of fighters. Missiles streaked through vacuums, smashing into unfinished warships before they could leave their docks. Entire fleets were destroyed before they had even been born. Engineers screamed as firestorms consumed them, the pride of the Vadron Empire turning to ash in hours. In the aftermath, a single message was transmitted across Vadron space, broadcast from every human ship. "You killed our ambassador. Now you will learn what it means to awaken humanity's fire." The galaxy listened in shock. No one had believed the young species capable of such precision, such brutality. For centuries, humans had been studied as reckless dreamers, fragile newcomers. Now they were spoken of as predators, their wrath spreading like wildfire. In the smoldering ruins of Charon 7, a Vadran officer whispered to his commander, "If this is how humans answer one death, what will they do if we push them further?" The commander gave no reply. He had already seen the answer written across the stars in fire. The Vadran Empire struck back with fury, their fleets surging into human space like a tide of steel and flame. Dozens of warships emerged above Earth's colonies, their cannons tearing through orbital defenses. Civilian transports screamed for help as alien fighters swarmed them, leaving trails of wreckage and shattered hulls drifting in the void. Entire cities on frontier worlds burned under plasma bombardments, their skies filled with falling fire. But humanity did not cower. On Mars, orbital cannons hidden in the red cliffs rose from their silos, unleashing devastating volleys that split Vadran cruisers in half. At Europa's ice domes, human marines ambushed boarding parties, fighting in narrow tunnels where Vedran's size was a weakness, not a strength. On Titan's surface, mech brigades stormed into battle, their heavy frames tearing alien war machines apart in brutal close combat. The Vedran commanders mocked humanity as reckless, but their soldiers soon whispered another word: relentless. Human troops fought with a ferocity few species had ever seen. Where Vedran soldiers hesitated, humans improvised. Where Vedran technology faltered, humans adapted with raw determination. Every ambush, every trap, every desperate stand bled the invaders. In orbit above Proxima Outpost, Admiral Chen led a counterattack that became legend. Outnumbered 2 to 1, she ordered her fleet to charge headlong. Human ships weaved between larger war cruisers, striking at their engines and retreating before the Vedran guns could lock. When a destroyer was crippled, its crew rammed straight into an enemy flagship, tearing it apart in a blaze that lit the void. What looked like desperation was, in truth, strategy. By the battle's end, the Vedran armada limped away, leaving behind wrecks and silence. News of humanity's defiance spread across the stars. Some alien species watched in horror, others in awe. For every city the Vedran destroyed, humans answered with devastation tenfold. For every soldier lost, 10 Vedrans fell. Humanity had become fire given form, and the galaxy began to whisper a truth it had once laughed at. This young race would not be broken. Among the Vedran High Council, fear crept in where arrogance once ruled. Reports arrived daily, entire garrisons erased, colonies turned to rubble, fleets reduced to drifting debris. Yet still the humans fought on, hungrier, fiercer, as though Hale's death lived in every one of them. And deep inside the Empire, whispers began that perhaps the Vedran had made a mistake too great to survive. A captured Vedran admiral sat chained in a human interrogation chamber, his scales dulled and his once proud crest hanging low. The war had dragged for months, and yet his silence broke only when he realized execution was near. His words fell heavy in the cold room. "It was never only us," he rasped. "The order came from others in the council. They feared your kind. They wanted you crushed before you rose too high." The revelation spread through Earth's command like wildfire. Generals and leaders who had believed this war was about vengeance now saw the deeper truth. It was survival. Hale's death had been a trap set not just by the Vedran, but by hidden hands woven through the highest chambers of galactic power. The council that pretended to protect peace had betrayed its own halls. When the president addressed humanity again, her voice carried the weight of the secret. "This is not one empire against us," she declared. "This is a conspiracy to erase humanity before it can claim its place. They poisoned Hale because he spoke of equality. They murdered him because they feared what we could become. But we are already what they feared." The words hardened every soldier's resolve. In the trenches of burned colonies, Marines swore vengeance, not only against the Vedran, but against any who had plotted in the shadows. In the fleets above Earth, crews painted Hale's crest on their ships, a silent reminder of why they fought. Allies who had once stayed neutral began to shift uneasily. Smaller species, long bullied by the great powers, now saw humanity not as a reckless upstart, but as a chance for change. Quiet offers of support trickled into human command: supplies, information, even fighters who had grown tired of the Council's dominance. For every enemy humanity gained, it also won silent friends. In secret, Earth's War Council drafted a new strategy. No longer was this about punishing one empire. It was about dragging the hidden truth into the open, tearing down the corruption that had murdered Hale. Humanity was no longer fighting for revenge. It was fighting for a place in the galaxy where no one could ever again silence its voice. And in the dark chambers of the Council, where masked figures whispered of fear and control, a new dread began to grow. They had unleashed a storm, and now the storm knew their names. The sky above the Vedran capital burned crimson as humanity's armada descended. The silence before the assault shattered when Earth's super dreadnoughts opened fire. Kinetic slugs the size of buildings, tearing through planetary shields that were said to be unbreakable. Towers crumbled, fleets ignited mid-orbit, and the ground shook as fire rained from the heavens. Civilians screamed while soldiers scrambled to form defenses, but the storm had already arrived. Human Marines dropped from orbit in waves, armored in black steel, their banners marked with Hale's crest. They crashed into enemy lines with ruthless precision, advancing street by street. Plasma fire lit the alleys, but every time a squad fell, another surged forward, their battle cries echoing in alien streets. What the galaxy once called reckless now looked like inevitability, humans refusing to stop until the enemy broke. Inside the palace, the Vedran High Council panicked. Generals shouted orders, but communications were in ruins. Their fleets in other sectors reported the same nightmare. Human weapons striking shipyards, human fighters crippling supply lines, human infiltrators turning allies into rebels. What was once empire had become a collapsing house of fire and smoke. At the edge of the city, tanks rolled over barricades, crushing defenders beneath their treads. Mechs carried flamethrowers that turned bunkers into infernos. In the skies, human pilots dove straight into enemy squadrons, fighting with a ferocity that left alien commanders stunned. The Vedran had thought themselves untouchable, but now they saw their strength unravel before a species they had called weak. And humanity's message followed every strike. Broadcasts echoed in every occupied city. This is for Hail. This is for Earth. This is the price of betrayal. The words blared from commandeered speakers, painting the war not as conquest, but as justice delivered in fire. In the chaos, a single human flag was raised atop the Vedran citadel, its fabric torn but unyielding against the flames. Soldiers below roared in triumph as the symbol spread across networks, proof that the unthinkable had happened. The Vedran home itself had fallen under human boots. Across the galaxy, other species watched in silence, some with horror, others with awe. Humanity had not just answered the assassination of its ambassador, it had rewritten the balance of power. And as the flames consumed the Vedran capital, the galaxy whispered one truth: Earth had arrived, and nothing would ever be the same. The war ended not with negotiations, but with silence. The Vedran fleets lay in ruins, their proud banners burned away, their leaders dragged from shattered palaces. Humanity stood where no one believed it could, victorious against an empire older and larger by centuries. The council, shaken and divided, had no choice but to bow to the reality forged in fire. In the great chamber where Hale once spoke, the seats of the conspirators sat empty, their names condemned and their influence broken. Humanity's delegation entered not as guests, but as victors. The new ambassador carried Hale's crest on his chest, and when he stood in the center, no one dared interrupt. The words were simple, unpolished, but they carried the weight of an entire species. We asked for peace. You answered with poison. We answered with fire. Now hear this: Earth will never bow again. Allies who once hesitated now leaned forward with respect. The smaller nations, long crushed by the great empires, saw in humanity a symbol of defiance. The powerful species, those who had plotted Hale's death, remained silent, their eyes dark with fear. The galaxy understood. Humans had proven themselves not through diplomacy, but through fury, and the stars would remember. Back on Earth, a statue of Jonathan Hale was raised in the heart of the United Nations. His figure stood tall, hand outstretched as if still offering peace. Around its base were carved the names of every soldier, sailor, and pilot who had fallen in the war. Families wept there, but their tears were not only grief, they were pride. Humanity had suffered, but it had risen higher than ever before. In schools, children repeated his speech as a pledge. In the colonies, soldiers painted his face on their walls, a reminder of why they fought. And across the stars, when alien merchants, diplomats, or soldiers whispered of Earth, they no longer spoke of weakness. They spoke of fire. The galaxy had tried to silence a human voice, but instead it had awakened an entire species. Hale's death became the spark of a legend, and that legend would never fade. For every star humanity touched from that day forward, one truth would travel with it: Earth remembers its martyrs, and Earth always answers.